Good morning, everybody. This is Gil. I'm taking over today, taking over the reins today solo as Dr. K is away, and I decided that we would go with a stock hunting webinar, and I'd give some overview of how I approach my intraday screening for stocks and trying to assess what's going on in the market using the HGS intraday features. Before I get started, though, over the weekend, I don't know if any of you watched the NHRA Winter Nationals, but it brought back a great story in my life, and that is that when I was a kid, down the street, across the street and three houses over, a good friend of mine, Gary Shatswell, his dad was the pit crew chief for this funny car. For those of you not familiar with the funny car, it's essentially a dragster frame underneath with a body, a fiberglass body on top, and this is a very unique car. It was called the California Stud, and it was one of the few rear-engine funny cars of its day. And I recall back then, they take it to the races. My friend's dad was the pit crew chief, and so their garage was basically filled with all sorts of great drag racing parts and engines and whatnot. And I used to love to hang out there. And so when they'd race the car, I'd be able to go with them. And one of my jobs, along with my friends, since we were about 11, 12 at the time, was to pour the bleach underneath the tires back here so they could do a burnout and heat up the tires, for those of you who are familiar with the whole drag racing scene. But I remember in I think it was 1972, they were racing at the Professional Dragster Association meet at Orange County International Raceway, which used to go, the tail end of the racetrack used to go underneath the 5 freeway, for those of you who are familiar with the area. And that was long before Orange County had been built up, Irvine had been built up, and the whole place turned into the quagmire that it is today. It was nothing but orange groves and agricultural fields. I just want to make sure real quickly, everybody can hear me okay, right? Good, okay. I got a new PC. I don't know if some of you noticed, because I was talking about how mine was going on the fritz last week, and I got everything set up very quickly. We're using it today, so I want to make sure everything works well. But in any case, this was a 32 car meet, is elimination, 5-round elimination, and you start with 32 cars and you end up with 2. And I remember we won the first round and we won in the second round, and that was a big deal because this car was pretty much an innovation at the time and something of an oddity as well. You can see the driver sitting in the front, the engine was in the back. But I remember we lost in the third round, and so everybody's somewhat dejected. Got back to the pits, and the guys decided to get the car ready to run again. And I was thinking, I'm a 12-year-old kid. I think, well, why are they doing that? They lost. They're pretty much out of it. But they got the car ready for the next round as if they were going to race, and they went ahead and went down to the line. And apparently there's an obscure NHRA rule back then that if the guy that you lost to in the previous round for some reason was not able to get his car started at the line or be prepared for the next race, he would default to whoever he beat in the prior round. And so, I mean, the odds of that happening are probably slim and none. But what ended up happening is that the guy could not. It was L.A. Hooker, I believe the name of the car was. The guy could not get his car started, and so we started up our car and we got in the race, and it was in the fourth round, the semifinals, and the race was against Don the Snake Prudhomme. Some of you might be familiar with that if you had Hot Wheels cars or just familiar with drag racing or racing in general. And of course, the yellow Barracuda, very intimidating looking car, and of course a big name in drag racing, and we beat him in the semifinals, and so we went to the finals. And I remember we lost in the finals to Big John Mazmanian, and some of you who've seen prior webinars have seen on another one of my PCs, I have the wallpaper as a picture of that car as one of my favorite cars. and we lost in the final round. But for second place, we got $49,000, and in 1972, there's a lot of money. But I remember that made a huge impression on me as a kid, because here they were, they had lost, but they didn't give up, and the odds were completely against them, and yet they still got prepared, and they went out and were ready to do battle. And I think, that's the whole point of my approach to the stock market, is that I don't give up. And regardless of what might happen or what might be happening, I continue to prepare as if I'm going into battle every day, which I am as far as I'm concerned. But it's a very stark lesson in never quitting, and that preparation is always key no matter what. And so I think that's a good lesson for all of us to take to heart. And it still has a huge impression on me to this day. But that was a wild night, I recall, as a 12-year-old, and the party that ensued afterwards. Because even coming in second place, and 49 grand was a ton of money back in '72. And also the fact that this car has a distinction of being only one of two funny cars, rear-engine funny cars, in the history of drag racing to make it to the final round of any major drag, or I think any drag racing competition. Anyways, with that said, let's get down to business here. We can go through stating the obvious. This is my little watch list here. For those of you who are always asking, what do I look at during this? This is pretty much it. I pick a few stocks that I'm hot on or that I own. These are my positions right here, right now. Some things I've either traded or watching or own in other accounts, whatever. But I find through the day, just to watch something this big is easy on the eyes and doesn't get me bogged down with watching a lot of minutia. And the real key is what we see in here. And of course, we're going to update this intraday. So we're going to update intraday now. And while that's happening, we can take a look at the indexes. NASDAQ gapped out. Last week I thought we were headed higher. And the key there, for me at least, on Monday was when we had the sell-off on Monday. There's all this fear about Greece leaving the EU, which I think the EU should just boot them out, but that's just my opinion. And the market had come in, and it did sort of fail in here, but of course it's running back straight up into resistance at the peak of this range, which is sort of a pennant formation if you draw lines on either side of it. And I thought what was constructive on Monday, you had the pullback, and the next day we came out again, we gapped up, and we started to move higher. And of course the market has had this random feel to it, which is a little bit frustrating and drives everybody nuts. And you've probably all been losing some of your hair at least. I haven't, mainly because I'm trying to keep things cool and haven't made any huge commitments this year so far, because I haven't seen anything that really gets my appetite whetted. But I think at this point, on Tuesday, I began to see more things percolating among individual stocks, and so I began to get much more bullish. And for those of you who follow me on Twitter, might notice that I made a tongue-in-cheek market call of downtrend under pressure, which is just kind of a joke, but as far as I was concerned, the potential for the market to break out to higher highs was growing. Now, we see that that's the case, but I was already starting to take positions on Monday and Tuesday. And if we look back at some of the things that have worked, I should note, though, that the S&P is just clearing out today. I don't know if you guys can see this. Hopefully you can. The screens are bigger. I got bigger monitors. It's all exciting, but I'll pump it up a little bit here. So you can see we're just clearing the S&P to new highs. NASDAQ has already gapped out yesterday to new highs, and I guess Dr. K's market direction model went to a buy signal, which is probably pretty obvious, but it doesn't really drive my approach to the market whatsoever. So it is what it is, and if you're using it, use it. You can use it accordingly. In any case, if you recall last week, I talked about a couple of names that I thought were ready to launch. This one did launch in Trexon. I think that was the last webinar last week. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, I think it was here. And I said I probably need a couple more days, a little more time. You can go back and look at that video if you want. But it looked to me like they had completed the secondary offering here around 27 and change, I believe. And it was off the 50-day that day. I believe it was here. But in any case, that stock's launched, and it's up about 30% from where I told everyone to buy it. So, we get some email from somebody whining that our ideas are ill-timed and do not succeed. And I get a little frustrated because I'm here to help people make money. And what frustrates me is sometimes I feel like people aren't even paying attention. They've got some other agenda, like they're upset that we don't kiss up to Bill O'Neill or think that canceling is the greatest thing in the world and blah, blah, blah. And they want to get themselves all their panties up in a bunch about that. And they're not paying attention to where the real meat of what we talk about every day is, and that's about where some of these names are setting up. And so, yeah, yes, Scotty, I got a solid state drive, so it's pretty fast. That's what I like about this thing. Anyways, we'll get to that, so just hold your horses. Anyways, this thing's launched and going higher. We pointed out the pocket pivot in cyber, ARC software on Tuesday. Could have bought that, and for those of you who read me on GoMo Report, I think I was tweeting possibly, but maybe not, that this is probably one of the few stocks that I've told people you could hold into earnings. Why? Because I think the whole space is hot, and I think this is a significant move on Tuesday given the volume. That's probably presaging a strong earnings report. So I thought the odds were with you if you wanted to play earnings roulette. You're probably playing more earnings craps where you can control your risks a little better. Craps is the favored game among traders, with poker being second. But essentially you did actually get a double bottom breakout yesterday before earnings, and then of course we got the Bible gap up here with a low of 52.30. So that's actionable. It may not launch out of here and head to the moon, although it already seems to have done that, because if you go from here, the pocket pivot is around $40. You could have bought this little pullback, say 40, 41 bucks. You're up, a good 20-something percent, close to 25%, I think, at this point in a couple days. That's the kind of stuff I like. I'm long the stock right now. It's kind of flopping around. It's way up there. I would almost like to see it settle in a little bit, maybe volume dry up, but it may not do that. It may just keep going. I'm sort of reminded of FireEye back, if any of you remember back last year when it gapped out. It was a huge gap move, similar prices too, and came out and then it just took off. But you did get a little pullback to the 10-day a few days later, so that might be something to watch for on cyber. Anyways, let's take a look at what we got going on here. These are all the stocks that are, wait a minute, that are up on volume today. You can see on this, I hope you guys can see this okay, but in any case, all of these numbers here on this column are giving you your volume readout. So the stock that's up the most, it has an ERG of 223, which is not too bad. I'll be checking my monitors over here from time to time, so just so you know, because I am running about 6, 7 positions here in different accounts. So we got this Cognex is on fire, I guess. It's on the upside with big volume. That's what it looks like. That's not very exciting, but we can kind of flip through this real quick. Vasco Data Security, let's pump this up a little bit and make this a little bigger. Nice Bible gap up here. FireEye, I thought this was a Bible gap up yesterday. I think these unorthodox types of Bible gap ups, such as with Twitter, that are deep in their patterns and don't look so obvious, I think these are names that can be but I'm watching my account values jack all of a sudden. I'm just wondering what's driving that. Oh, there, data finally is getting going here, over 99. I think that's headed through the century mark, so I keep an eye on it. If you're long that, you might want to add to it, but we'll get to that name later. And so I think these work. And FireEye, I've been watching this for a while. Finally, earnings come out. You can buy the gap move, I think. It's extended now, but that looked good. Freescale Semiconductor, this one's acted okay. You can see it's up today. They say that they're going to take themselves private or look for a buyer. I think that's what the news was. Microchip Technology doing okay. This Qualys, very thin stock. It trades 277,000 shares a day. Doesn't really thrill me. I mean, for somebody who's got a smaller account, it can be bought, though. Or it could have been bought on the Bible gap up. Ball Corp, there's nothing. These aren't really that exciting. Skechers, you had a Bible gap up yesterday. I actually own a pair of these things. I go running with them every morning. The thing's holding up on the Bible gap up. You can see you had pocket pivot-like move here on Wednesday and continuing higher. Equifax cruising along. Here's one. I think these guys are being bought out, so I don't know if this is a Bible gap. You might want to double check on that. But if it is within range if you wanted to buy it. Zetas. I don't know what's up with this stock. This looked like a good Bible gap, but to me, I actually bought stock on Wednesday, and then you had a big jack in the morning thanks to Kramer, who was pumping it on his show, and so I'll sell into that kind of gap right off the bat, and then it's coming in, fills the gap, looks like it's trying to come out again. I don't know what to think. I think it's kind of squirrely now, so piece of junk. There's some talk of them being bought out, or they're trying to be bought out. Bill Ackman, the hedge fund guy, the activist hedge fund guy, I guess they call him, is out there trying to get seats on the board and blah, blah, blah. Las Vegas Sands, you can see this thing's turning. A 5-day pocket pivot here, that's why that's blue. The guys at HGSI, they set this up so that these blue things show up whenever there's a 5-day pocket or a 10-day pocket. Again, just to look at here and say, oh, this is a pocket, this is a pocket, all just because they're shaded blue. There's a lot more to it. Remember, I think most pocket pivots probably don't work. I think it's all contextual in terms of understanding which name is the proper one that you want to be in, and where for which the pocket pivot is more relevant. You know, you want to focus on leading stocks, not just any old stock. So I know there's someone out there with a program that apparently it's called Edge Rater or something, and a guy named Chris, good friend, very nice guy, and the program will tell you, you know, if you use a certain trading system, you know, what your hit rate is on your odds of success or how well it works. But for my process, it's totally irrelevant because I don't operate on the basis of a rote system, a mechanical system, and then trying to apply it to every single stock on the planet and then determining what my hit rate is. Hit rate's irrelevant to me. I only need one hit rate, one cyber, one data, one grub. Grub's moving today. I'm long that. Let's see, ComScore. That's the Bible gap up, trying to go higher. Whole Foods Market is coming up. I noticed the groups, Sprouts, SFM is also doing pretty well. Vantiv, another one. You see a lot of these gap ups, and these are things I was starting to notice not just yesterday, but over the last few days. You're seeing more and more of these. And I look at things more from an unorthodox perspective. Just because you're not seeing breakouts per se doesn't mean that in another traditional type breakouts doesn't tell you anything about the market. I really think you have to look at in a more unorthodox way for what's happening and what's working, because in this market we know that mostly bottom fishing and roundabout type of pocket pivots work. An example would be the pocket pivot here on Lanet down here, and we talked about this, and you had a Bible gap up that didn't really go anywhere, but it held the 20-day moving average. See right here, the green line on the pullback, and then another gap up that held, and it's cruised all the way back up to the highs of this peak here, and now we're forming a cup. And probably going to have to form a handle. It's got to consolidate this at some point, and so I think that's probably what it's doing now. But it's a name today down on volume. Anyway, we're just cruising through this list. I'm watching. I would keep an eye on these solars. I think there's some interesting stuff going on. First Solar had some big news that Apple's buying $180 million or something. Solar farm are going to have them build it for them. I don't know about this. The solar farms, I guess they're very PC, but they take up a lot of land space, and nobody ever thinks about that. They're also really dirty. They get very dusty, and you got to clean them off. So it's not like the most perfect thing in the world, but you know, it's very PC, and Tim Cook is all PC now. So whatever floats his boat. Mastercard had a pocket pivot yesterday. I think we might have mentioned that this morning in the MLR. Horizon Pharma cruising along. Some of these stocks are down on volume. But you can see there's a fair bit of, what was that? Lyondell, oil company, chemical company rather. Packaging, Visa, had a pocket pivot here. This thing looked like it was a short, to tell you the truth, and then filled this gap in here more or less, and then came out with a couple of pocket pivots. You can see a whole cluster of pocket pivot volume signatures here. and then pulls into the roughly into the 10-day and now trying to go higher. So that as a short is off the table. That's the other thing over the past week that's sort of struck me, is that the things I was shorting and making money on over a period of time in January all have turned against me. And oh, this is, yeah, what I'm looking at, somebody's asking about this. What I'm looking at is what's moving among the stocks that were up on volume yesterday. So today's the 13th, so I just sort of a follow through. What we can do, and we can flip through this real quick now because I'm pretty much gone through this. So we take all securities, and actually there's a quick way to do this if you just go Alt. And what we want to do is go over to the warehouse and do the same thing. So this will get us, and why don't we just for fun, let's bring things a little more up to date. So you quickly go over here, and you can see how fast this works. See the intraday update taking place, and it's going to go through a couple of bars of this, I believe. Let's run through some questions. Somebody says improved picture on my end too. Somebody making a good comment, I think, about my story to start this presentation off. Winston Churchill said, when you find yourself going through hell, keep going. Yes, I agree. Please darken magenta line. I'm not going to do it right now. Someday I'll do it. Okay. Now we're going to go to the warehouse. And what I'll do here, just to kind of, because you get a ton of stuff in here, is I'll put a filter on here, user filter, price up with ERG 180 or better. And there we go. So now you're seeing, let's look at some other cool things here. This is hopping and bopping, a $1.70 stock, not really my cup of tea. A lot of cheap stuff here moving. And it stands to reason because cheap stocks are able to generate larger volume increases. So yeah, data started getting going, now it's sort of petering out again, but that's okay. I expect it will run into some overhead here. But Vasco data, this is a viable gap up type of move. I think your low here is 26.69. So let's fly through some of these. We already looked at FireEye. I want to fly through this, see if I see anything. This is kind of how I do it. Just cruise through as fast as I can. Jay and Smucker, nice reversal there. Doesn't throw me, but a lot of times you'll see a lot of stuff, and so I think that tells you what's going on underneath the market. Cheap stocks, microchips acting okay. Fortune brands, nothing really here. So yeah, flipping through here pretty quickly, I get a sense there's an Trexon, and it's acting well. I probably need to pull in and form a little candle or something and consolidate this 30% move off the 30 level from last week. Skechers, Threshold Pharmaceuticals, a cheapie. Yeah, these are all junk. But they're stocks with ERGs over 180, and the ERG is comparable to the O'Neill composite rating. I'm not even going to use any of the composite rating stuff or O'Neill rating stuff. I don't need it. This new feature pretty much replaces Wanda, but I'll keep my Wanda just because Liberty Global on a gap up move today. I don't see anything that exciting. It's cable, I think. Whole Foods, we looked at that early. Vantiv, another one. I'm looking for stuff just to get a view of what's happening in the market. Also, anything that might be new, something I haven't seen. Glue Mobile, that's junky. So we're just flipping through this, and you can see that with the new drive, I can fly through this stuff and go through a whole list of stocks that are moving on volume. And I don't think there's anything out there available to anybody, at least at the price, without extra charges. I'm not sure if MarketSmith hooks up to the internet or to a quote system, rather, and allows you to view things more or less in real time. But I think this is incredibly valuable for, what, $600 or whatever they charge. I'm sorry if some of you get offended because you're O'Neill cult members and you don't want to hear it. But the bottom line is, I work there and I know what their strategy has become. They want to hook you, they want to pitch you, they want to hook you, and then they want to gouge you. And that's when the consultants came in back when I was there. That's pretty much the plan they came up with. They determined that, well, you don't have a huge audience, but the audience you have is pretty fanatical, so you can gouge them. And you start charging them $3, $4, $5, $15,000 for webinars, and they come, and they'll come. And I don't know if you think it's worth it, but it seems pretty excessive to me. The home study program on short selling, $695. Look, the reality is, if you look at the new book that I just finished writing on short selling, it's $40 on Amazon. It's marked down from $60 if you pre-order it. And it is a short selling course in and of itself. And I think it's much more relevant because it's much more real world. In terms of it being written by somebody who's actually done a huge amount of shorting, which I have. And I've experienced pain on both sides of the market, short and long, in my day. And so I know what it's like to get kicked around on the short side. I also know the ecstasy of making a lot of money. And over the years, I've learned a lot in the process. And I try to convey that in this book in a way that I don't think anybody really ever has. So. But by the same token, I wanted a paperback version because that makes it cheap for people, and they can buy it at $40. That's incredibly cheap, I think, for what you get in this book. And that's, I think, the right way to do this. If you're going to teach people about the market, do it in a way that, well, first of all, I think if you are really good, you don't need to really make a lot of money doing it because you're making a lot of money in the market. And if you really want to help people, then at least price it so that, yeah, you make some money, but you'll also make it accessible to people, and I think that's very important. So you can see as I'm babbling, you can see things kind of hopping along. So, there's Quintiles Transitional Holdings, Healthcare Service. That one's been gapping up. I noticed a few gap ups, but nothing really terribly exciting. Did anybody see anything that got them excited? Someone asked, do you do this on most days? Yeah, for the most part. Around this time, I'll do it several times a day. And then the next thing I'll do is I look at my buy list, and this is where this comes in pretty handy. First, I want to remove the filter, no filter, and then I'm going to go to, if anybody knows a quick way to get to one of your user groups, so I go to my, gives me buy list here. And this shows me what's, I sort it by volume, so this is showing me what's trading on declining volume and what's up on big volume. So the trick here is if we look at something like this may be pulling back, and so this is where I can pick up voodoo pullback. So if we know the volume here based on the printout here, or the readout here, is minus 67.9% for this time of the day. And this is all adjusted for this time of the day. So they did the algorithm I gave them is the one they have in here, and so it's sound. All right, let me see. Just give me a couple of seconds here, everybody. Okay, where were we? So what we can do here is, since I know that the top of the list is stocks up on where the volume's increasing, now I go through my watch list very quickly. Of course, there's the wonderful cyber. Vasco Data has been on my watches, and this one's coming back to life as far as I'm concerned. Earnings come out next week. I think it's Tuesday, and this probably is Bible too. FireEye is working, so the whole group's on fire. And I theorized at the end of last year that the cybersecurity group was probably going to be a strong area. Barracuda Networks. Let's get things updated one last time. I like to just constantly update these while I'm doing it, and it's it's fast. You can see it does it very quickly. You don't have to sit around for days. And the best thing is the price is right. Somebody says they got a special introductory deal for $4.99 a year, which is great. And I also agree, I endorse what the guys there are doing. They're trying to offer a very good product, and they're improving it without raising the price. And I like that whole concept of making things accessible to people. Because the one thing I run into a lot are people with not a lot of money, and they're just getting started. I mean, I started with $3,000 back in 1991, so I understand how that feels. And I want people to have access to good tools at a decent price, where they're not getting ripped off. Anyways. Yeah, maybe this one is Bible. It is, but the volume is. Where is ZTS? It's on here somewhere. The volume's up 193%, so maybe it's getting some support. So it might be Bible in here. I don't know. Let's see. Continuing along, Celgene. You can see some of these volumes up, they're down. That's not hanging in there. Grubhub. I felt this pullback into the gap here. The gap fill here in the 10-day. Was Bible. This occurred because of news that Yelp bought Eat24, which is a tiny company compared to Grub. They're about 1/10 their size in terms of sales. And I thought it just created a buying opportunity in Grub. And you can see that yesterday we went code blue, which I thought was positive. And you get a little pullback this morning. Boom, the thing's running today. You're at 39.42. I'm not going to say running, but it's moving back up into the range of the Bible gap up 7 days ago on the chart, and so this is a buy on the pullback. And I think the fears probably just shook out hot money coming in on the Bible gap up, or whoever may have bought down in here had an excuse to take profits. But if you look at this, you go up here, you basically retrace half of this move, and you hold along the 10 days. So you just come in here and you start buying it. That's what I did, and I've got a decent position. Let me see. I would say right now about 30%, maybe a little more than that at this stage. But just kind of nibbling, buying along the 10-day. Be patient with it. Let it come out, and it should come out. That's what I figured, and it is so far. But this whole online takeout business is estimated to be or have the potential of $9 to $10 billion with a B, in sales per year. And right now, a company like Eat24 does like 28 million or something like that, whereas Grubhub does something like 350 million a year. And if Yelp is going to buy an outfit like Eat24, which I don't use and I'm not really even familiar with, I do use Grubhub and it works great. You have your app on your iPhone. I think that Grubhub could be bought by Amazon or Expedia, because I think you're going to see these other companies, TripAdvisor, I think you're going to see them move into this area, because the whole mobile space and mobile payments, mobile this and that, is growing, and it's going to continue to be a phase or a wave that continues to wash over the economy in terms of a new way of people ordering things and buying things and paying for things. I was at Sprouts Farmers Market yesterday afternoon, and I noticed a number of people using their iPhone to pay for stuff. Of course, I use cash. I use iCash, so it's just green paper, and they did accept that, fortunately. But I could see how we're getting to a point where that won't happen anymore. So, anyways, GW Pharmaceuticals, it's starting to get going here. Hanging along, you get the pocket pivot here. It takes a long time for it to try to set up again, but you are getting some 5-day pockets in here, and it's starting to come up. Here's this Zyopharm. I've been keeping an eye on it mainly because they did a 7.5 million share offering, a 10 million share offering. So they're getting more stock out there, and I'm interested in watching. It's also related to Intrexon, but I like Intrexon better. It's a bigger stock. This one's trading 3.2 million shares a day, so it's starting to get into the above the $30 million in daily volume per day. So that now you're getting into something that's getting me interested. And you're hitting approaching $10. I think we're at $9.95 on this thing. Let's see where we are right now. $9.96 is the last close. And so this might be an interesting thing to keep an eye on with Intrexon acting pretty well. So you could buy, a small position and see what happens, and maybe you'll get lucky and it'll be $50. I know Regeneron Pharmaceuticals started out that way, but what I always watch for in these little thin, garbagey things is I watch for them to start to grow up. And the other things, I don't develop an opinion about them. I didn't care much for this thing right off the bat, and mainly because it was just too thin, and you don't really see any institutional sponsorship. The company to go after, in my view, was XON and Intrexon, because they are partnered with these guys. They're related, and that's the one that's really had the big juicy move. If you notice, this thing's up not that much over the last 3 days, 10% maybe, whereas Intrexon's up 30%. So that's where I like to go. Canadian Solar, keeping an eye on the solars here. Now here's this QRVO, which is the combination of RFMD and triquint semiconductor, and it's trying to come up off the low. They're just keeping an eye on this one. MasterCard, you had a pocket pivot yesterday. So we're going through my buy list here. Here's data, and data trying to move higher. This sort of pullback here struck me as normal, because with a stock, if you've traded data before, if you watch it trade, as I have, it's pretty volatile on an intraday basis. Thing can swing all over the place. So it wouldn't surprise me, or it didn't surprise me rather, to see it drop down. It was about 3.5%, I think, below the 95.16 low here on the Bible gap up, which was 95.16, yeah. And so it kind of flips out, and I think you get some valuation sellers in here. But it's coming out of a big, you see this big cup, and it's coming out of this thing. So I think you get some overhead from the left side maybe, and it pulls in. So I had bought some on the gap day, and then when it didn't hold, I just sold it, and I figured I'd wait and see what happens, and then I bought it back here on this day, and so I've been long it again on the move back up. It just looked normal, and I like the fact that you got better volume here. If you look at right here, this volume bar took you back up to the high, so you could do this little V move, and now you need a couple of days going sideways before you can try to move higher. But I think if this thing gets to the 100 level, you're going to 110 in a hurry, so we'll see. And now that I've said that, it's probably not going to do it, but it'll take longer. Apple, I think the fact that Apple continues to move higher is constructive for the market. This is a viable gap up, so I know IBD is talking about this is the breakout, and now it's up 20%, and you might want to take profits, but I think this is a new base, and this is a breakout. So I'm not sure what they're talking about, but remember, they're newspaper writers, so take it all with a grain of salt. This looks okay to me. Probably not going to make blazing tracks to the upside, but it has continued to move higher, which I think is constructive for the market. First Solar trying to come back. Here's a pocket pivot. Now this occurred 4 days ago when Apple announced that they're going to partner with the company to make to build this giant solar farm. You're going code blue, volume's drying up. I think this may have a shot at going higher. Earnings come out on the 24th, which is a couple of weeks from now, and this may be making the turn. You can see that you've gotten some subtle pocket pivot in here, another small, more a 5-day one here, but in here it looks like you got some real buying in here, and it's holding tight, and so this is kind of interesting to me. I know this is a refreshing comment. You're a good guy for shedding light on the truth of what the O'Neill complex has become. Well, I'm just trying to warn people that don't get caught up in the hype, or don't get caught up in the idea that investing is a very simple process and you can just use a few simple rules and that this particular system is going to make you rich, blah, blah, blah. I think it's a lot more complicated than that. And I've been doing this for over a quarter of a century, over 25 years. Quarter of a century probably sounds longer, but I've learned a lot, and I realize that things are not so simple. The markets are not so black and white. I think the CAN SLIM system worked great in what was basically a secular period of growth after World War II. Where guys like Warren Buffett, you buy cheap stocks and on the pullbacks during the bear market, and everything comes out and goes higher. The last 15 years have been much more difficult, and you see a lot of people get chopped up in the markets if they are wanton or just don't really pay attention. You know what I mean? And think that's all going to be simple. And you see a lot of people getting chopped up by breakouts. LinkedIn, I think, is setting up to go higher. It may need a few more days, but you had the Bible gap up. Everything is staying code blue pretty much. You're getting a couple of red days in here. I guess, well, today it's getting a red day on the short-term force, which is a 2-day force index. Nothing to get excited about. Maybe the 10-day needs to catch up, but I keep an eye on this thing. I think it can go higher. May not do it right away, but I think it can go higher, and I'd be watching the pullback on lighter volume. Remember, we're looking at my buy watch list right now. Palo Alto Networks is moved to new highs. You didn't move on higher volume, but you did get pocket pivot here. I think it's a 5-day pocket pivot, but just barely above average volume here, I believe, 3 days ago, and you're moving to new highs. But this stock is the big stock leader among the cyber security names. So speaking of that, I'm watching Cyber Trade coming back in. Well, it's going to retest. The volume's light right here, and it's going to retest the lows of the day, which is 52.30. Let me see if I can pull up a let's bring a 620 chart out here. Get this guy out here. Five minute. Here we go. All right, you can see what's happening here. You had the gap up, already. So you set this low here at 52.30. Now, could it pull back there? It could. But I think what you're seeing here, it looks pretty normal because you're getting, let's make it bigger so everybody can see here. Let's see. Come back here. Here we go. You can see you get some selling right off the bat on the opening. That's normal. People are going to take some profits. And you run up, and now the volume was good on the upside. Now you're pulling back down, but notice how the volume is much lighter. Let me do something else here. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but there's a bird downstairs. We have a cockatiel named Kirby, and he's actually imitating me while I'm talking. I don't know if you can hear it in the background, but they have good hearing, and he can hear me talking, so he's in the background and doing all these weird little chatter sounds, which is kind of distracting me. But anyways, if he bothers me too much, I'll turn him into lunch for some lucky cat, but we haven't gotten there yet. But anyways, you can see some volume coming. I hope that's not you guys buying it, but it looks to me like you're getting the retest of the lows, and so this would be where I would be inclined to come into the stock if I didn't already own it. So I mean, I'll buy some today on the basis of the Bible gap up, because I think it's going to go a lot higher. So like I said, it might be like FireEye was way back in January of 2014. All right, back to business here. Take-Two Interactive. It's a stock that never really goes anywhere, so it's a piece of junk. I like Electronic Arts. That one's done well. Catalent, Visa, we looked at that. Amazon. Notice, again, Amazon sort of an unorthodox Bible gap up, and because it occurs, see this, it occurs from this position way down in here, but it works. And so I think, like I was saying earlier, like with Twitter, I think that you have potential for some of these unorthodox things to work. And here's Twitter. And Twitter, of course, and I didn't like Twitter before, and I made a lot of money shorting it on this breakdown, but I made a lot of money on the move up off the lows going up this way. So I have no, preconceived opinion. I think the stock could have gone lower, but it's not. Okay, so any theory I had about the thing going to $20 is out the window, at least short term. Maybe someday it does go there, maybe next year. But right now you've got a viable gap up, and it pulled in normally, volume dried up, and then it turned and is going to higher highs as we speak right now. And I'm long this thing. So I bought it on Tuesday on the pullback. It held the lows of the viable gap up, and the theory is of buying this viable gap up, which is unorthodox because of the position within the overall base, is similar to what you saw with something like Amazon. Even Netflix, I think, same sort of situation. SunPower, you notice here's another one. See, I noticed the group with First Solar moving along. SunPower getting some pocket pivots here. And I think that the group might be starting to turn again. And this group tends to, have moves up and then it'll correct and sell off and then it'll start up again. And the best place is to buy these things or as they're trying to turn out of the base. You notice you get pretty oversold here on the left side of the chart where these bingo bars show up. I think that's what Ian Underwood or Ian calls them. I call him Ian Underwood, if anybody knows who that is. It's kind of an inside joke. But anyways, Acorn, this one broke out. It's acting okay. Earnings come out later on in the month. BCA Antech, this is another of these stocks, Wolf, it's a healthcare company, but it doesn't want to go anywhere. Home Depot continues to trek higher. That's looked okay. Cavium on the comeback trail. You actually got a 5-day pocket pivot in here, but it's trying to come out of here. Facebook, I can't decide whether it's a long or a short. But this might come out of here. I tend to think it's a short at the 50-day, but at that point, when I see a rally there, it's like, okay, do I want to have my money long stocks or do I want to have my money short stocks? I think in this market right now, you want to primarily be long. Virgin America comes out with earnings next week. Now, they might be trying to turn off this base. It's a possibility. I would keep my mind open about this. Still a great airline, even though they were kind of silly and hedged away any benefits of declining oil prices. Southwest Air, these look like they're getting ready to turn. I've been looking at a few of these. JetBlue, I think, is another one. Spirit Aerosystems is holding in pretty tight. Skyworks Solutions, this thing's just kind of trucking along the 20-day and the 10-day. Maybe you buy it on pullbacks to the 20-day and look for a pocket pivot. Verint Systems may be coming up off the lows, getting pretty tight in here along the 20-day and the 10-day. So it might be worth keeping an eye on. Tessera Technologies, strong move up on pocket pivot. A lot of pocket pivots in here, if you notice. But it comes right back in. I don't know what that's all about. Did they announce a secondary? Is that what happened? Somebody's asking about GWPH. I already covered that one. But I'll go back to some of these. We'll get to some questions right now. Disney. Again, Disney's like Apple. I think you had the viable gap up and moving higher, and that's probably good for the market. JetBlue is setting up along the 10-day. I think this is probably viable. It's starting to go code blue. I think you'll see the airlines get going again, and that's why I'd still be watching Virgin America, which is in that position that I always watch for, as something's trying to round out at the lows of the base. Here we have Infinera. This thing has been slow, Bible gap up, but it sort of failed here, but it held the 10-day, and you've been getting some pocket pivots off the 10-day like here. So I think this looks okay. Not going to be a hugely rocketing type of stock, but it's having decent action. O'Reilly Automotive, after the Bible gap up's holding tight and the volume is drying up, so this might be ready to move higher for anybody who likes this sort of name. Taser had a 5-day pocket pivot yesterday, and it came up off the up to the 20-day and the 10-day, and you're getting a little blue here. That looks good. Earnings come out in a couple of weeks, so. And I'm going to guess they're going to show some pretty good numbers. JD.com, it's trying to turn, and probably its fate is tied up more with BABA. Electronic Arts, I pointed out earlier, I think is a better name. These are names that are showing declining volume and drying up today. You can see the volume dry up in here. Starbucks continue to move higher. It's just like Disney, like Apple, slow boat to China, but it's moving higher, and you buy it on weakness if you like it. And I think it will eventually get to the 100 level if this market continues higher. And right now I see no reason why it can't. GoGo, I'm keeping an eye on GoGo because a lot of these names, with the airlines acting well, a lot of these airline names are acting well. GoGo is trying to turn. Earnings come out in a couple weeks. I think Ent came out. I'm going to take a look at that in a second. Here's this Viva getting very tight and going code blue. I think this thing's going to turn and go higher. So I almost think it's viable right here if you like this name. It trades 888,000 shares. They're not too bad for a $30 stock. And this looks to me like it's tightening up and just ready to blitz. I could be wrong, but that's what it looks like. So I'll give you guys that one, and you all can run it up. So let me watch it now while you guys all jump in on it. There it goes. No, it's just sitting there, trading 228,000 right now in the day. El Pollo Loco coming out with earnings soon, going nowhere. Spanchen, now this one had a pocket pivot here 6 days ago, and it's hanging tight. Earnings already came out. I think this one's going to try and go higher. They make semiconductors used in cars and very basic things, so it's acting okay. Zeltic is right at the 10-day, so that to me that's a buy point. Its volume's drying up and it's right at the 10-day, so you can see that, and that's what I like to see. Fibrogen, this is a cheesy little biotech, but buy them when nobody wants it or buy when it's quiet. Pulling in, volume's drying up, but trade sooner 12,000 shares. So be forewarned. Not sure who's bothering me, but let's see. Relipsa is another one. Michael Companies hanging in there. So you can see I can pick up some names that are drying up and look like they're setting up to go higher. I can get a sense of what's going on with the general market. So now what I'm going to do is answer some questions. Somebody asked about GWPH, but I already talked about it. It's starting to act pretty well, and it's been holding along the moving averages here. Let's see. Some other ones. STMP, is that stamps.com? The old, I remember that thing. Well, I guess you could look at it as a viable gap up. Let's take a look at a couple of things here. First, where are we overall? Whoops. Well, that's like a giant cup with handle it's coming out of. So it's a viable gap up, I think. And the only issue here is that you're way extended from the lows of the gap up day yesterday. So they must have just come out with earnings. Whoops. Let's see. Please comment on RAD. Well, it's Rite Aid, so it's a big drugstore like CVS, and yeah, I guess you could call this a viable gap up, but kind of a slow name, and maybe it trucks higher. Not really something I'm interested in. COLM, what is this? Columbia Sportswear. There's another viable gap up. So you're picking up viable gap ups. The only problem with this is I think it's kind of extended, so not something I would play with, but somebody says teach the bird to say moron. Actually, what the bird does say when someone walks into the room, he will say, hybrid brain, get a job. His other favorite one is here, kitty, kitty. Anyways. Somebody asks, what was your reasoning for not entering on the BGU day or even the day afterward? I like to let them settle down sometimes. And this one I figured you got some overhead from the left side of the chart, so just see how it acts and let it settle down. The other thing is I don't have to be, if the market's turning and I'm long a couple of names. I don't necessarily have to start adding more stocks. I can wait and see how things develop. And my view is that if you're patient and you try to operate on an opportunistic basis, you will be more successful than chasing strength. And I just felt that, a number of people came out and said, oh, you got to sell Twitter here, it's a short, and blah, blah, blah. And I like to sometimes just kind of lay back and see if it comes to me. That's just my method of operating. So, and it has been sound. SCSS. I don't know. I don't. It's just beds. Select comfort. It doesn't thrill me. It's hanging in there. You got a pocket pivot on this day here, and then I guess there's the retail sales yesterday didn't thrill the company, but it held in there, so it looks okay. CY and TSEM. Well, this one's hanging in there okay. It's getting tight. You can see the volume drying up, and just in the base, but nothing totally thrilling. TSEM. Let's look at that one. Nothing there that I like, really. Anyways, that seems to be all the questions I have right now. Let me check, do a quick update one more time. Whoops. Excuse me. Still getting over. I don't know if you remember last week I had starting a little bit of a cold, and it turned into a full-blown flu over the weekend, and so I'm feeling better now, but still a little congested. These things kind of linger. I don't know if anybody's had them, and I also had a flu shot, so I'm going to get a refund on that one. So, anyways, LCI has turned around. Someone's pointing. Yeah, it's now up a penny. SCSS I already talked about. Any other questions before I sign off here? So I think you're getting some sense of what's going on here. Names that I like the FireEye. I think LinkedIn looks okay on the pullback. I like Cyber, the Bible Gap, but that's kind of obvious. Grub I think is acting well. Twitter's acting well. Data I think is heading higher. Intrexon has been a great play so far this week. I think for my money I sell it here and see if it kind of settles in. The 10-day catches up. GoGo is another interesting name to keep an eye on. I know this is getting pushed up. You guys are probably all buying it. But just real quickly, I think some of that, well, Ant is maybe having some problems, and maybe it's GoGo taking market share. I actually used the service. It was on a commercial flight, and I used it on it a few months ago. And it actually was very fast, and I was running screens and things, and everything was just flying through. So I was pretty impressed with the service. I don't know if it's that way everywhere you are, but it was good enough for me. Any advice on holding longs or shorts going into a 3-day weekend? What sort of advice would that be? I don't, that like there's some magic recipe, and why would you worry about a 3-day weekend? If I'm up on my stocks from the last 4 days and I've got some things that have really been flying, say like Intrexon, I don't really have to worry about holding, what kind of margin I have for error, and I wouldn't get bogged down on regarding a 3-day weekend or whatever. If you've got cushion, why not just sit? And based on my post analysis of what I did last year, yeah, I did 115%. And that was great, but this is a new year now. And the one thing I noticed is that in some cases, I didn't need to trade as much as I did. And I didn't really need to cycle around as much as I did. I can see that I could have waited and been more patient. And maybe on some days, you do absolutely nothing. Maybe for a series of days, you do absolutely nothing. But once I took positions, I would take big positions and then let them ride for the move, the duration of their move, or at least campaign them for the good 20-30% of upside, in some rare cases more. But the bottom line is I realized that I don't need to trade as much. I didn't need to trade as much, and so this year I'm trying to trade less and to implement this whole idea of being much more patient rather than feeling I need to rush into things right away. And the other thing is, don't start scaring yourself with boogeymen, creatures in the closet. The weekend is just the weekend. if something bad's going to happen, it can happen overnight on any given day. So what makes the weekend any different? If there's anything, there's supposedly going to be a final solution for Greece on Monday, but my feeling is if Greece left the EU, that would probably be a good thing because it would probably indicate the start of the process of cleaning things out. And if it does cause a sell-off in stocks, for all you know, it's an opportunistic event that you can use to your benefit. So yeah, it could happen in the next minute, So I wouldn't get bogged down in creating, in what I call seeing ghosts, because they're not really relevant. This is what's relevant, what's going on the chart. So last question, Tesla, stay short Tesla. I guess you can stay short. I think it's a doggy stock. I think it's eventually going much, much lower. I don't think that they're going to be able to hold off or be entirely free of the effects of competition. Consumers are discriminating, and they will go elsewhere if they feel they can get better value for their dollar. And I think Elon Musk is losing credibility because of his tendency to hype things and the company's tendency to selectively disclose information only when it's favorable. And I think that's a very bad practice in general. And so I think the company is losing some credibility. But you can give him some credit for getting the whole electric vehicle thing up and off the ground and having success there in terms of raising the bar for the other car companies to follow and setting some precedents in terms of figuring out that you need to create an infrastructure to charge these things up as well. Anyways, somebody asked, do you create a new Gives Me list every day? Well, I have a list and I can be adding names or taking names away, deleting names on a daily basis based on what I'm seeing on my screens and the action of the individual stocks. So anyways, on that note, it's 9:02. We've been going for over an hour. I hope you guys found this helpful as a substitute for the usual droning sort of webinar that we do. I think this sort of approach is more relevant. If you have any feedback on it, let us know, and we'll respond accordingly. Anyways, have a great day. You guys have a great long weekend as well. For those of you in Southern California, we got beautiful weather in the 80s here, and it's just gorgeous beach weather. So I plan on enjoying it even more so if I can make some more money before the end of the week. Anyways, have a good day, you guys. We'll catch you next time. Take care.